Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Baby Boomer Entrepreneur Show. I'm your host, Andrea Stenberg, and I thought today was a good follow-up to my interview with Lisa Malice, where she talked about one of the ways to get control of your to-do list is by outsourcing. And my guest today is going to give us some great tips on how to do that. Dina Eisenberg is a digital strategist. It's easy for me to say, strategist. And she helps entrepreneurs take content they've already created and monetize it. And she's following her own advice and creating, she's got a book coming out on Amazon, and it's the Essential Fiverr Buyer's Guide. So that's exactly for outsourcing. So welcome, Dina.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm really thrilled to be here. I always love talking with you, and a chance to talk about Fiverr a little bit and why it's so great is wonderful.
So how did you get started on Fiverr?
So, I've been an online marketplace junkie for years. I was probably one of the first people on guru.com. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Dating us both. But, I was an early adopter on that platform, and I really liked being able to, open up and get some help in my business. And so I've sort of stayed in touch with those kinds of marketplaces. And last year or the year before, I did a course on Elance. And this year I decided, you know what, I'm going to take a look at Fiverr, mainly because I just heard so many, how can I say this well, horrible rumors about Fiverr, and you're going to be scammed, and it's terrible, and who could make money. And it was just so clear to me that people didn't understand the platform. Folks who are solopreneurs or self-employed folks didn't understand the benefit to them for using Fiverr to grow their businesses, and that nobody else was talking about it. So I thought, okay, it's going to be me.
Okay, so Fiverr, maybe for people who haven't been on it, explain a little bit what it looks like and what you're going to see when you get on there.
Happy to. So what is Fiverr? Fiverr is the largest online marketplace for professional services and creative services. And in fact, I just learned recently that they are number 64 on the list of top 100 U.S. sites. 64, very, very popular site. What you're going to find on Fiverr is a whole bunch of providers who, for $5, are willing to do stuff for you, like create a banner or a headline, do a voiceover for you, write your press release, review your website for SEO. I mean, just about anything that you could think of, and I'm not even kidding there, just about anything you could think of, you can find someone on Fiverr to do it for you. This site launched in 2010, and it's just been growing like gangbusters. It was launched by a lawyer in Israel. His name is Micah Kaufman. And really, he was just sort of sitting around thinking, like, I'm tired of being a lawyer. I want to do something else. I want to be an entrepreneur. Where can I put my talents? And it was around the recession, and really started looking at the fact there was more and more unemployment, and people had skills and talents, and they needed to make money, but there wasn't a good way to do that. Because in the traditional freelancing model, what happens is it's a reverse auction. So you say, hey, I want you to review my book and edit it, right? And then people bid, and then you usually take the lowest bid. Well, Fiverr is actually the exact opposite, right? Michael wanted to make sure that you are always getting quality, so he eliminated the price problem, right? If everything costs $5, then you're selecting people based on the quality of their work and how much you like it. And so that's sort of how Fiverr came about.
Now, I know, we've all heard the expression, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
So are you actually getting quality when you're paying $5 for something?
You'd be surprised, but you are. And I'll just talk a little bit about the fact that it's a little bit more than $5 now, because that's the main complaint I hear from people is, I went on Fiverr for $5, and either I didn't get good quality, or it costs more than $5. So let's just blow both of those myths out of the water right now. The quality on Fiverr is good because largely the folks who are providers on Fiverr are just like you and I, right? They're skilled professionals who have a side gig on Fiverr, right? It's not like scraping the bottom of the barrel and you don't know who you're going to get. Usually these are very quality folks, and you can use some of the Fiverr indicators to make sure that you're getting someone who you're comfortable with. So the quality work is good. In fact, when you see the cover of my book, that's a Fiverr cover. I spent $25 on that cover. And so let's jump to the second point, which is, does it cost just $5? Originally, everything cost just $5. Over the ensuing 4 years, Fiverr has sort of matured their business model like you would expect them to. So in 2013, they sort of opened it up. And so I think went from going $5, and now you can have gigs for up to $500. The average price that people pay is about $10 to $100. The average price I usually pay for my gigs is around $15 to $25. Clearly something that everybody can afford.
Well, yeah, and when as I mentioned, I interviewed Lisa Malice, and she was talking about delegating as one of the important things for gaining control of your to-do list. And if you're giving away tasks that maybe you're not very good at and take you a long time, and focusing on the things that generate money, then spending $10, $20, $30 on those tasks is really valuable if it's going to save you 2 or 3 hours where you're generating income.
I totally agree, but you know us entrepreneurs, right? We start out with this mindset of, if I don't do it, it won't be done right. And how could I trust this person? They know nothing about me or my business, right? Those are the kind of limiting beliefs that hold your business back. The truth of the matter is that what you're going to spend 2 hours trying to figure out how to do on Canva, I'm a big fan of Canva, but I realize it's a time suck, because the way I want it to look takes me about 5 hours to do that. I can hop onto Fiverr, and I have a collection of designers that I already vetted, I already like. So in 5 minutes, I pick one of them and say, hey, this is what I want it to look like. I give them an example. In 2 days, 4 days, I got it back. Now, I spent my time, those 5 hours, doing something much more productive, like talking to my Clarity clients or writing my next book, instead of trying to wrestle and being frustrated. That kind of frustration really impacts your confidence after a while. When you can't do a couple of things that you want to do, you start thinking, I'm maybe not so good at everything. So one of the reasons I really like outsourcing is it gives you a chance to do what you're good at, give away the stuff that you're not so good at, and keep your confidence high.
Now, one of the things you said that I thought was kind of important is you said you've got a sort of a collection of designers that you've already vetted.
Yeah.
So how did you find them? How do you go about choosing who you're going to use on an ongoing basis?
Question. I mean, the first thing that out of the box, you really kind of want to have an outsourcing strategy and understand when you're using the outsourcing and for what purpose. So a good example is that, I do a lot of visual stuff, and so do you. Those kinds of graphics I'm happy to do on Fiverr because they're quick hits, they're inexpensive. I'm using probably just once or twice, not a lot. And so I don't mind if, it's not exactly perfect. When I want something that's really bespoke to me, somebody's design is exactly for me, and they're going to be giving me their expertise and their input on it, then I'm going to outsource to another resource, and usually that's a virtual assistant, right? So it's really just about knowing where you're comfortable and where you want to put your efforts. I would say that in my outsourcing strategy, I do most of my work on Fiverr and Elance, and a small amount of work with a personal VA. So that's how I'm sort of looking at beginning the project. And then you were asking me again. Now I just lost my chain of thought. So what were you asking me?
So you've decided what you're going to outsource. How do you decide who is the one for you?
So here's the cool thing about Fiverr is they help you with that, but you have to understand a little about it. So they have levels. There's a new arrival, which is a level 0. You won't see any indicator on their profile. That means someone's just arrived. They've only been on Fiverr less than 30 days, and they have less than 10 sales. Now, for that kind of person, I'm not usually choosing them unless it's a project where I'm like, okay, what the heck? I want to give someone new a chance to build up, their gigs. Level 2, that's somebody who has done 10 gigs in 30 days on a rolling 30-day basis on Fiverr. And what that means is that Fiverr says, yeah, they have some experience, they delivered the product, and they got great reviews, good reviews, right? So then they advance them to level 2. I do a lot of work with level 2 folks because, they're already proven. The last level is the top-rated seller. And, it's kind of one of those mystery labels. You're not certain how somebody gets to be a top-rated seller. It's in part because you've been doing a bang-up job. Really, customers like you. You have a high-converting gig. And then Fiverr says, hey, you're going to be a top-rated seller. Those are the ones that you really want to go for, but they're also the ones that tend to have a long turnaround time, because they're so busy and so many people do want them. So I'm really looking for somebody who is at a level 2. I'm looking at their portfolio because I want to see what their work looks like. If it's a graphic person, if it's writing, I want to see the examples of their work, and I want to match it as closely as I can to what I want. Because on Fiverr, you're looking for the closest match.
Okay, so I could see, for example, for my business, what would be great to outsource is the images that I spread on social media. So when I create a blog post, I'll have one image for the blog post, and then I'll have the same image but different size for Facebook and one for Pinterest, and so that's the kind of thing that you're talking about.
Exactly. That is exactly it. In fact, you could decide that you wanted to do, and I've actually done this, so I'll just talk about what I did do. I was launching a new program, and I knew I didn't have time to do the social media. So what I did was I wrote out a couple of tweets that the way I wanted it. I went on Fiverr. I found somebody who will actually do your tweets. I gave them my sample tweets and said, I want it to kind of sound like this, but I want you to create more tweets, right? So they created a series of tweets for me, and then I handed it off to a VA on Fiverr and said, okay, here's my social media stuff. I want you to tweet this stuff out over the next 2 weeks. The total of that was like $40, but it meant that I didn't have to search around for the pictures. I just gave them the content. I didn't have to do any of the distribution. I handed it off, and it went, and it was perfect.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
So for somebody who is a control freak entrepreneur and has never outsourced anything, what's a good place to start?
Yeah, the shallow end of the pool. I think that for people who are just getting started on Fiverr or any other platform, graphics is a great place to start. And marketing is one of the top 3 gigs that people do on Fiverr and on other platforms. So do a visual, right? Ask someone to create a banner or a button for you or a Facebook cover, right? Because you're going to be more comfortable. You can actually see more of their portfolios. You can see the actual work. Those kind of gigs generally have a lot of reviews, so you're looking for someone with a lot of reviews. And when I say that, I'm looking for someone with 80, 90, 100, 300, 1,000 plus reviews, right? If someone has 1,000 plus reviews and they're rated at a 4.9, I feel pretty comfortable using them now. I think they're going to be okay. And then don't start on something that either is time urgent, like you need it tomorrow, or it's uber important, right? You want to ease yourself into it so that you begin to feel comfortable with the platform and understanding how it works.
Okay. Now, you said you don't want to outsource something that you need, say, tomorrow. So how do you work that into your workflow? Is to know how long it's going to take and what's the process for that?
Good question. So the workflow thing is very important. So when I'm actually browsing through Fiverr, and I'm just going to give a tip right now. I recommend that if you're going to start using Fiverr, start browsing first before you need it, like weeks or 2 before you need it, getting accustomed to the way the profiles look and just looking at the pictures and getting a sense of what you like. You want to do that early on. And gosh, I lost my train of thought again. I have to stop interrupting myself. What was I saying?
Your tip for working it into your workflow.
Workflow. So when I'm browsing, one of the things I'm looking at is the turnaround date. It's at the top on the right-hand side. You'll see how many days it takes them. and then how many people are in the queue, right? So if someone says, I'm going to give you something in 3 days, but there are 47 people in the queue, hello? It's not going to be 3 days, or it's not going to be the quality that you want, right? So I try to pay attention to that. Like if I know I need it within a week time, I'm looking for someone who's going to give me a turnaround that's maybe 3 or 4 days, and it doesn't have a ton of people in their queue, but I also want to be looking at the reviews because I want them to be good, but just not busy at the moment.
Okay. Now, if you've done some graphic work, like say you're getting your blog posts and all those social media images done, what's the next thing that you might want to look at outsourcing?
Yeah, you know what? Here's the things. Some of the things that I think people should consider doing, and they're projects that you should do, but they're on your someday list. So if you don't have terms of service or a privacy statement on your blog, you can have someone on Fiverr do that. If your about page is, mediocre, it's fine, but it could use some pepping up and refreshing. I just had someone on Fiverr do that for me for one of my sites. We always think that online is best, but sometimes offline marketing works great. So if you're an offline retailer, maybe you decide that you're going to have somebody on Fiverr design a postcard for you. Or, even better, how about a postcard magazine? There's one provider on Fiverr, and I think it's like $25, and he designs a little magazine on a postcard that you can mail out, right? Those kind of things would take you, or me, forever to do. It's going to take him like 15 minutes, and you're going to look like a rock star to the folks who get the postcard.
Now, so what kind of sort of information do you need to give somebody? Like, so say I've got a blog post and I want a picture and I want something that's going to go on Pinterest to accompany it. What do I need to tell them or ask them?
Great question, because that's the place where most people fall down at, is that they're not really as thoughtful or clear or precise as they should be when they're giving the request for a gig, and that's what I call it, a gig request. And so there are two ways to post on Fiverr. You can either browse and then request somebody and request a gig from them, or you can post and Fiverrs will say, hey, I'll do your gig for 1 gig or 2 gigs, which is $5 each. I tend not to post because those posts usually get a lot of response. I looked at one the other day, and it was a simple request, and it got 80 people saying I would do it. That means you have to spend your time vetting those 80 people and going through them. So I almost always have my own collection of folks that I'm browsing through. And then I'm really writing my gig request very tightly. And here are the 3 elements I almost always include in every one. One is sort of the introduction. Just like you'd meet somebody, you want to be nice and say, hey, it's nice to meet you, and why you like their stuff. 2, you want to tell them about what your thing is and how it fits into your larger picture. So when I get a header done, I say, I need this header, here's what it's for, and here's where I'm using it, right? So if there's any problem, the provider can sort of think through what I'm using it for and maybe solve a problem before it comes up, or before they have to tell me. And I'm absolutely, positively giving them examples of what I like and what I don't like. Right? You don't want to leave that to chance. You want to be the one sort of drives that conversation. So definitely say. And you can't necessarily assume if you've been through the provider's portfolio and you like something they did, that they will remember what it was. That was one of my early mistakes. I'd be like, I like that thing you did for it, and I'd mention the person's name, and they'd be like, who? Just so many people running through their system, they don't remember, really. And so if you like something in their portfolio, copy it using Jing and share that back to them so they can see exactly what it is. So those are the things that you definitely want to put in your proposal. You want to be as clear as possible. Make sure you double check the spelling, because it's their responsibility to check your spelling, your grammar, that kind of stuff. You're a big guy now. You got to pull up the big guy panties and do it yourself. And then if there's anything that you don't want, you should say that. So, for instance, I try to say to people that, I don't want them to use images that aren't commercially licensed because, if you buy an image and you think that you have the license for that purpose and then you don't, it's kind of on you. So I try to say, I want to make sure that, you have a commercial license for this to be used because I'm going to be using it commercially when you create my headline or a banner or whatever. Those are the kind of tips that you want to include in your gig request.
Now, if you're working with somebody you've used them over and over again, is the communication always just through Fiverr, or do you ever get on Skype or on a Hangout, and if it's something a little more complex?
That is a great question, and it leads to a tip that most people don't know. Most of the communication is on the Fiverr platform, and you want to stay on the Fiverr platform because if there's an issue later on, you want to be able to show the chain of conversation they had. So you want to stay on their platform. Fiverr does not want you to use emails or mention money, and if you do that, there's a little red note that comes up and says, you said the wrong thing, you're not allowed to say that. But you want to communicate on their platform. The cool tip is that you can actually contact any provider before you buy the gig and ask them questions, and I do that all the time. I'm going to get a press release done, and I wanted to know, what information do you need right now to do that press release? I wrote to the person and I said, oh, so tell me. She wrote back, and now I know exactly what I would need to provide for her to do my press release in advance of buying the gig. So it's not one of those places scenarios where you buy it and then you're like, what do I need, and it takes so long. I was able to contact her ahead of time. So you can do a lot of communication on the Fiverr platform, and you should stay on the platform as much as you can. If there's things you need to give the person, you could do it through Dropbox or Google Drive, and I've used that to be able to transfer files that were a little bit larger than you could upload onto Fiverr.
Okay. Now, is there anything that we should not be outsourcing on Fiverr?
You know what? That's a hard question for me because part of me wants to say, no, you should try it all. On the other hand, the other part of me wants to say that if it's an ongoing branding thing, then I'm probably not going to use Fiverr for it. And here's the reason why. So when I wanted to, rebrand my site or I want some ongoing marketing help, I'm not using Fiverr because that person's orientation, if you will, is kind of a quick hit. They're not maybe going to give my project as much consideration in the 15 minutes they're going to give it as I would like. So when it's something that's long-term to my brand or something I'm going to have as part of my company for a long time, then I'm going to go to Elance, or I'm going to use a private VA to do the work, or I'm going to use another consultant off the platform to do the work. Those kinds of things, you want to be able to go back to the person, get their expertise, change things up, and really have a thinking partner, if you will, right? I don't necessarily think of the folks on Fiverr as my thinking partners. I think more of them as my extra set of hands, my extra set of eyes, sometimes my extra brain, but mainly my extra set of hands. So if I think about things, yeah, I send it out.
I like that idea about the thinking partner for the people that you really want to collaborate with. But if you just need to get some stuff done, that's what the Fiverr is for.
Yeah, and you tend to develop relationships. Like I've had the same header designer for a while, Jimmy Gibbs on Fiverr. Great guy. He does amazing work, and he sort of recognizes me now because not only have I done so many gigs with him, but I've referred so many people to him. He kind of, was like, hey, Dina, all right. Oops.
So, do you refer people from within Fiverr? Like, is it like a bit of a social network, or is it just somebody like you're talking to Andrea and I go, hey, my friend Dina told me about you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a, hey, my friend Dina told me about you. But there's a large Fiverr community. It's very cool. To sort of be on the other side, because I'm actually a seller on Fiverr as well. I decided if I was going to write about it, I wanted to have both sides of the experience. So I have my gig on Fiverr. I don't think anybody's ever bought it, and that's fine. But it lets me be in the forum and talk to other sellers and find out what's going on for them. Like one of the cool things, or interesting things, I should say, that you might not know is that Fiverr sellers are just as worried about being scammed as potential Fiverr buyers. there for them, it really is difficult when somebody orders work, gets the work, and then denies it or says it wasn't good and then doesn't pay for it. So, they have their issues too on the selling side of things, and it's important to know that as a buyer because it makes me more aware of what it's like for them to do their work, and so I can make it easier for them to do my work, right? I know the things that they're worried about, so I try not to be doing those things. They can just get my work done and give it back to me.
So, if you do have a problem, is there some kind of a dispute resolution format or system?
That's part of the trust system, which I investigated before I started even doing anything. Is do they have a DR system, dispute resolution? My background work is as a mediator and an ombudsman, and so I'm always looking for a way to collaborate when there's a problem. I have to say, out of 50 plus gigs on Fiverr, I've only had to use their DR program once, and
Wow.
that's pretty amazing. What happens is that you engage their dispute resolution program. What they're going to ask you to do is pretty commonplace, and the right move is go back to the provider and talk about what went wrong and ask to have it remedied. And so the provider gets, I think it's 2 days to respond back to you. If they don't, or you're unhappy with the response, you can go back to Fiverr and say, hey, I'm unhappy with that. I need your help. And then they step in. I did a video. You could get videos done on Fiverr. So I was so excited. I was like, yes, I'm going to get an explainer video. I hired someone to do it, and it didn't cost $5. It cost $85. But that's far less than I would have paid anywhere else. And I was just experimenting. And so I was excited. I gave the person all the information they needed, and I never heard from them again. And so
Wow.
I was like, oh, what happened here? And I, wrote them a little note saying, hey, if you got backlog, that's okay, but I'd still like the video. Nothing. And then eventually Fiverr just refunded my money. So you don't have to worry about that you're not going to get your money back if something goes sideways. Um,
Okay. Well,
yeah,
that sounds really interesting, and I think it's definitely something that I'm going to have to go back in. I was in Fiverr a while ago, and I haven't looked back, but I'm definitely thinking that it's time for me to dip my toes back in the water and at least get some of my graphic work done.
absolutely. They're on they call it version 3 of Fiverr. So it's changed quite a bit since, if you were using it in the early days. The interface is much, much nicer. It's very cool looking. The search function has gotten a lot better. And here's something that most people probably don't know, is that they've added a buyer rating system. So you rate the seller when he provides your work. They also rate you as a buyer. So just throwing that out there for folks to know.
So that's good to know. What kind of things are they rating you on? Is it just on like that you pay promptly, or is it about like are you a pain in the butt?
Are you Yeah, that men. Are you a pain in the butt? Are you responsive? How are your communication skills? So yeah, you're getting rated right back, and that's a good thing, right? Because it makes sure that people who are going to be difficult are not on that platform. I'm really thinking that everybody should give Fiverr at least one try.
All right. So if somebody wants to get a hold of your new book because they want to get all the ins and outs of using Fiverr before they try it, where can they get a hold of it?
Oh, thank you for asking. So, if folks want to get a free copy of the Essential Fiverr Guide, Fiverr Buyer Guide, they could go to my website and get the free copy at, http info product doctor is spelled out, .com/free Fiverr, and Fiverr has 2 R's, guide, all one word, and then they can just sign up and they will get a free copy of the release when the book launches on September 23rd. After the launch, it'll be $5, so now's a good time to grab it if you're going to get it.
That sounds great. Well, Dina, thanks again for joining me on the Hangout. It's you've definitely opened my eyes, and I think I'm going to be experimenting over the next little while and see how it goes.
I'm glad to hear that. I hope everybody does. I'm so thrilled that we got a chance to hang out and talk a little bit about Fiverr and the whole deal. I'm so, I read your blog all the time and I love it. So I hope folks are going to tell their friends to read more of your blog posts.
Thank you, Dina. And I did not tell her to say that or pay her $5.
Yeah, here's your $5.
All right. So, everybody, thanks again for joining Dina and I hope all of you are going to go out and get Dina's book. I'll make sure I have a link to the her book in the show notes. So if you did get a chance to write it down, you can just click the link. And I will see you again on the next episode.